I'm Elena, your host for today's lesson. Do you ever feel like your English is good but not truly great? Like you're stuck at that intermediate level using the same simple words over and over? Today, we will change that. This isn't just another lesson. It's your advanced fluency masterclass designed to take you from a B1 speaker to a confident C2 master of the language. Forget saying, "My day was busy." By the end of this video, you'll be saying, "My day was incredibly demanding." We will unlock the sophisticated vocabulary and natural sentence structures that will transform how you speak in professional meetings, write important messages, and have casual conversations. This is your roadmap to sounding more confident, more precise, and more natural. If you're ready to truly elevate your English, make sure you're subscribed with the notification bell on for our daily videos. Now let's begin your transformation. When we think about moving from a B1 level in English to a C2 level, the first thing that comes to mind is vocabulary. Vocabulary is the foundation of fluency. Without the right words, we cannot express ideas fully, describe emotions accurately, or participate in advanced conversations naturally. At the B1 level, you already understand the basics. You know how to introduce yourself, talk about your day, and share opinions in simple sentences. But at the C2 level, you must learn how to shape your words into precise, rich, and flowing expressions that carry confidence and clarity. For example, at the B1 level, you might say, "This project is hard." That is correct, but it is simple. At the C2 level, you could say, "This project is incredibly challenging," or "I'm finding this project quite formidable." Notice how the meaning is the same, but the advanced versions show variety, emotion, and stronger vocabulary. This is the first step we are going to practice together, learning to take simple sentences and expand them into advanced fluent expressions. Let's practice together. I'll give you a basic sentence and you try to say it in a more advanced way. Here's the first one. "The park is nice." Now, how can we make it sound more advanced? You could say, "The park is stunningly beautiful," or "The park has a serene and tranquil atmosphere," or even, "The scenery in the park is absolutely breathtaking." Each of these upgrades shows you how to go from simple vocabulary to richer, more advanced vocabulary. Pause here, repeat after me, and try to create your own advanced version. Now let's try another one. The basic sentence is, "The book was boring." At the C2 level, you might say, "The book was rather tedious," or "I found the plot to be quite predictable and uninspired," or "The narrative simply failed to hold my interest." Can you hear the difference? Each version is clearer, more expressive, and closer to what advanced speakers would naturally say. This kind of practice is what will push you from B1 to C2 step by step. Another important area is connectors. At the B1 level, many learners often use simple connectors like and, but, and because. At the C2 level, however, you must use more advanced connectors such as although, nevertheless, moreover, and consequently. These connectors make your speech smoother and more logical. For example, instead of saying, "He studied hard, but he failed the test," you could say, "Despite studying diligently, he didn't pass the test." Or, "He studied hard. However, the outcome of the test was disappointing." These connectors are like bridges that carry your ideas forward in a professional and fluent way. Let's practice this together. Repeat the simple sentence after me. I couldn't join the call because I was busy. Now, upgrade it. I was unable to join the call as my schedule was completely packed. Another version. Due to my demanding schedule, I had to miss the call. And a very advanced version. Given that I was preoccupied with urgent tasks, I couldn't attend the call. Do you notice how each version becomes richer and more advanced? That is exactly the type of training that will lift you toward the C2 level. When learning at the B1 level, many students hesitate to use new words because they fear mistakes. But at the C2 level, confidence is key. You must dare to use new vocabulary and advanced structures in real conversations. Making mistakes is part of the process. In fact, each mistake is like a stepping stone toward fluency. For example, if you use a difficult word incorrectly, you may feel embarrassed, but the next time you will remember it better, and soon it will become a natural part of your speech. So, in this master class, I encourage you to practice loudly, without fear, and to embrace every mistake as progress. Now, let's do a short daily life practice exercise. Imagine you were in a meeting that took a long time. At the B1 level, you might say, "The meeting was long." Now let's push it to C2. Try saying, "The meeting was unexpectedly prolonged," stretching well beyond its scheduled time. Or, "The meeting felt interminable with discussions that seemed to go on forever." Another option could be, "We were in that meeting for what felt like an eternity, covering a vast range of topics." Repeat these after me slowly and try to picture yourself saying them in a real conversation. The more you connect your words to your life, the faster you will progress. Finally, let's talk about rhythm and tone. Fluency is not just about vocabulary, it is also about how you deliver your sentences. At B1, many learners speak word by word, with pauses that break the natural flow. At C2, you must learn to speak in chunks, linking words together. For example, instead of saying each word separately, like "I went to the store," try saying it smoothly as "I went to the store." And for advanced practice, expand it. "I went to the store to pick up some essentials before dinner." Notice how the sentence flows naturally when spoken with rhythm. This kind of fluency comes from shadowing practice, where you repeat sentences exactly as you hear them, copying the tone and flow of native speakers. We will continue practicing this throughout the lesson. One of the clearest signs of progress from B1 to C2 is the ability to describe things with precision. At B1, you may describe something in broad or simple terms. For example, you might say, "The city is big." But at C2, you need to add more color and detail. You could say, "The city is a sprawling metropolis, brimming with energy and life." Or, "The city is vast and incredibly diverse, with a unique blend of historical and modern architecture." Notice how these advanced sentences paint a picture. At higher levels, your English should not just inform, but also create images and emotions for the listener. Let's try a practice together. The basic sentence is, "His car is old." At an advanced level, you could say, "His car is a classic model, meticulously maintained over the years." Or, "While his car may be vintage, it has a certain timeless charm." Or even, "It's an older vehicle, but it runs with surprising reliability and character." Pause here and repeat after me. Now, create your own advanced description of an older item in your life. Another area that defines C2 fluency is the use of idiomatic expressions. At B1, learners often use direct and literal words. At C2, however, idioms, collocations, and phrasal verbs become essential for sounding natural. For example, instead of saying let's start, you could say let's get the ball rolling. Instead of saying it's very expensive, you could say it costs an arm and a leg. Instead of I'm in trouble, you could say I'm in hot water. These expressions bring your English closer to how native speakers communicate every day. Let's practice with a few idioms. Repeat after me slowly. He finally decided to bite the bullet and ask for a raise. Now another one. I have to study for the exam, so I think I'll burn the midnight oil tonight. And one more. She passed her driving test with flying colors on the first try. Each of these examples uses idiomatic language to replace simple B1 expressions with colorful, advanced alternatives. Try making a list of your own favorite idioms and practice using them in your daily conversations. Moving forward, we must also pay attention to nuance. At B1, you might rely on one or two basic words to express yourself. But at C2, you must learn synonyms that carry different shades of meaning. For example, let's take the word important. At B1, you might only say, this is important. At C2, you could use crucial, vital, essential, critical, or pivotal. Each word describes importance, but with different intensities. Vital suggests something is necessary for life, while pivotal means it's a key turning point. Mastering these subtle differences will make your English richer and more precise. Let's practice synonyms together. Repeat after me. Getting enough sleep is vital for your health. Another one. His contribution was pivotal to the project's success. And one more. It is absolutely essential that you follow the instructions. Now try to imagine different situations in your life and use a specific synonym for important. Instead of only saying important, push yourself to select the right word that fits the situation best. This will bring you closer to advanced fluency. Another important skill for C2 is paraphrasing. In real-life situations, sometimes we forget a word or we don't know the exact term. At the B1 level, this can cause pauses or hesitation. But at the C2 level, you must learn to express the same idea in another way, smoothly, and without breaking the flow. For example, if you forget the word deadline, you can say, the final day, you have to complete a task. Or if you forget the word ambitious, you could say, someone who is very determined to be successful. This skill keeps your speech fluent even when your vocabulary isn't perfect. Paraphrasing is a survival tool for advanced learners. Let's do a short exercise. Imagine you forget the word optimistic. How could you explain it? You could say, a person who always expects good things to happen. Or, someone who always looks on the bright side of life. Now imagine you forget the word flexible. You might say, someone who can easily adapt to new situations. One more. Imagine you forget the word reliable. You could say, a person that you can trust or depend on. This practice trains your brain to keep speaking without stopping, which is one of the strongest signs of fluency. Finally, let's touch on register. The ability to adjust your language depending on the situation. At B1, you may use the same words in both formal and informal situations. But at C2, you must know how to change your tone. For example, with friends, you might say, "Hey, what's up?" But in a job interview, you would say, "Good morning. It's a pleasure to meet you." Both express greetings, but they are appropriate in different contexts. At C2, you should be able to move smoothly between formal, neutral, and informal registers depending on where you are and who you are talking to. Let's practice this. Imagine you are asking a friend for some information. You might say, "Hey, you got the notes from class?" That's informal. Now imagine you are writing a professional email to a professor. You could write, "Dear Professor, I was wondering if you could please provide me with the notes from yesterday's lecture." That's formal. Both mean the same thing, but the register is different. Try practicing by taking one sentence and saying it in an informal, neutral, and formal style. This flexibility is what makes you sound truly advanced. One of the most important qualities that separate B1 speakers from C2 speakers is flexibility with grammar. At the B1 level, learners usually rely on simple tenses like the present simple, past simple, and future simple. At C2, however, you need to comfortably use a wide range of tenses and grammatical structures. For example, instead of saying, "I lived here for 5 years," which is grammatically correct but basic, you could say, "I have been living here for the past 5 years, and during this time, I've learned so much about the culture." This not only shows advanced grammar, but also adds depth and detail to your ideas. Let's practice with a sentence. Basic version. I will finish the report tomorrow. Now try advanced versions. By this time tomorrow, I will have finished the report. Or, I will be working on the report all day tomorrow to ensure it is completed on time. Or even, having completed my other tasks, I will be able to focus entirely on finishing the report tomorrow. Each version uses a different tense and structure, but all show a higher level of control over grammar. Another big step towards C2 fluency is mastering conditionals. At the B1 level, learners may only use simple conditionals like, "If it rains, I will stay home." At C2, you must also use advanced forms like the third conditional or mixed conditionals. For example, if I had studied harder last year, I would have passed the exam with flying colors. Or, if I were more confident, I would speak in front of large audiences without hesitation. These conditionals allow you to talk about unreal situations, regrets, and hypothetical scenarios with fluency. Let's try some practice examples together. Repeat after me. If I had known about the traffic, I would have left home much earlier. Another one. If she weren't so busy with her new job, she would be traveling the world with us. And one more. Had I invested in that company 10 years ago, my life would be completely different today. These sentences may feel challenging at first, but once you master them, they will give you incredible flexibility in expressing ideas at the highest level of English. Apart from grammar, you also need to build advanced vocabulary for emotions and abstract ideas. At B1, you might say, "I was surprised." At C2, you could say, "I was absolutely astonished by the results." Or, "The news left me completely bewildered." Similarly, instead of "I am happy," you could say, "I am absolutely thrilled about this opportunity." Or, "I feel content with how things turned out." Notice how the advanced words carry stronger emotion and more precise meaning. This is the type of vocabulary that will make your English stand out. Here's a practice exercise. I'll give you a simple word, and you'll try to replace it with an advanced synonym. The word is interesting. Instead of interesting, you could say fascinating, captivating, intriguing, compelling, or thought provoking. Now try the word sad. Instead of sad, you could use heartbroken, devastated, melancholy, or sorrowful. Now let's try beautiful. Instead of beautiful, use gorgeous, stunning, exquisite, breathtaking, or magnificent. Repeating these words and practicing them in sentences will help you naturally upgrade your vocabulary from B1 to C2. Let's build some sentences together. Repeat after me. It was a captivating story that held my attention until the very end. Another one. The view from the top of the mountain was absolutely breathtaking. And one more. He felt a deep sense of melancholy as he watched the sunset. By practicing in this way, you start to internalize synonyms and naturally replace simple words with advanced alternatives when speaking. Another area we must focus on is advanced discourse markers. These are phrases that help you organize your thoughts and connect your ideas smoothly. At B1, you may only use first, then, and finally. At C2, you should use expressions like on the contrary, as a matter of fact. In other words, to put it simply, having said that, in contrast, by and large, and all things considered, these markers make your speech sound logical, structured, and professional. Let's practice with a short example. Instead of saying, the plan is risky, it could be very successful. You could say, the plan is admittedly risky. That being said, the potential rewards are enormous. Another example, he is a good leader. To illustrate, he always takes the time to listen to his team's concerns. And one more, we must finish this project. In light of our approaching deadline, we need to work efficiently. Repeat these with me and notice how they give your English a polished and advanced feel. Now let's take a step into real-life practice. Imagine you are discussing a movie with friends. At the B1 level, you might say, I think the movie was sad. At the C2 level, you could say, to be honest, I found the movie's ending profoundly moving, particularly in the way it explored themes of loss and resilience. Or, from my perspective, while the plot was compelling, the character development felt somewhat underdeveloped. These advanced forms show not only your opinion, but also critical thinking and confidence. That is exactly what you need to move towards C2 fluency. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. From my point of view, reading in English is one of the most effective ways to build vocabulary. Another one. As far as I am concerned, a positive mindset is crucial for overcoming learning challenges. And one more. In my view, technology has revolutionized the way we learn languages. Try saying these sentences with confidence, imagining yourself in a real conversation where your opinion matters. This is how you bring advanced fluency into your daily life. To reach C2 fluency, you must also learn how to tell stories in English. At the B1 level, many learners tell stories in short, simple sentences, often repeating the same structure again and again. For example, I visited a museum. It was interesting. I saw old things. I went home. While this is correct, it is not engaging. At C2, you must use richer vocabulary, time expressions, and descriptive details to make your story flow. For example, last week I decided to visit a local history museum. As I wandered through the exhibits, I was completely captivated by the stories of the city's past. and I left with a much deeper appreciation for where I live. This version sounds alive and interesting. It draws the listener into the experience. Let's practice together. Start with this simple version. I went for a walk yesterday. Now let's upgrade it. Yesterday, I went for a refreshing walk through the forest, and the sound of the leaves crunching under my feet was incredibly calming. Another upgrade. Yesterday afternoon, I decided to go for a long walk to clear my head. And as the sun began to set, the sky was painted with the most beautiful shades of orange and pink. Do you hear how each version adds life, color, and rhythm? This is the storytelling skill you need at the advanced level. Another key element at the C2 level is the ability to express subtle opinions and emotions. At B1, you may say, I like this song. At C2, you can add layers. I find this song incredibly uplifting. The melody has a way of boosting my mood every time I hear it. Or, this song resonates with me on a deep level because the lyrics beautifully capture a feeling I've experienced myself. Advanced English gives you the power to show not only what you feel, but why you feel it, and to do so in a sophisticated way. Here's an exercise. Repeat after me. I appreciated the film not just for its stunning visuals, but also for the thought-provoking questions it raised. Another one. I enjoyed the concert primarily because of the raw energy and passion the performers brought to the stage. And one more. I admired the book for its courage to tackle difficult subjects with both honesty and sensitivity. These kinds of sentences go beyond simple opinions. They give reasons, explanations, and emotions, all signs of advanced fluency. Another important skill at C2 is being able to hedge your opinions politely. At B1, learners often sound too direct, saying things like, that's a bad idea. But at the advanced level, you can soften your language and show respect even when disagreeing. For example, I see what you mean, but I'm not entirely sure that's the best approach, or that's one way to look at it. However, I have a slightly different perspective, or I understand your reasoning, though I have some reservations about the potential outcome. This type of language is essential in academic, professional, and social contexts. Let's practice some polite disagreement. Repeat after me. I appreciate your suggestion, but I believe we should also consider an alternative plan. Another one. You make a strong case. However, I think we might be overlooking a few key details. And one more. That's certainly a valid point, although I'm concerned it might be difficult to implement. Notice how these sentences keep the conversation positive while still expressing your own view. This ability is one of the hallmarks of C2 communication. Now let's turn to advanced practice with phrasal verbs and collocations. At B1, you may know some basic phrasal verbs like wake up, sit down, and turn off. At C2, you should learn and use phrasal verbs that carry more complex meanings. For example, look into means to investigate, call off means to cancel, get along with means to have a good relationship with, and put up with means to tolerate. Native speakers use these constantly, and mastering them makes your English sound natural and advanced. Here are some practice sentences. Repeat after me. The manager promised to look into the customer's complaint. Another one. They had to call off the event due to the terrible weather. And one more. I'm lucky that I get along with all of my colleagues. Try using these phrasal verbs in your daily life until they become natural. Then challenge yourself to learn new ones every week. In addition to phrasal verbs, collocations, words that naturally go together, are another mark of C2 fluency. For example, we say make progress, not do progress. We say a golden opportunity, not a yellow opportunity. Learning collocations will make your speech smooth and natural. For example, highly effective, deeply regret, blissfully unaware, fully understand, perfectly clear. These combinations are natural to native speakers, and using them correctly will instantly make your English sound more advanced. Let's practice a few. Repeat after me. It was a golden opportunity that I couldn't afford to miss. Another one. I deeply regret not studying harder for the exam. And one more. The instructions were perfectly clear, so I knew exactly what to do. Notice how natural these combinations feel. Try practicing collocations in sentences every day, and soon they will become automatic. At the C2 level, you should also be able to shift between abstract and concrete ideas with ease. At the B1 level, learners often stick to very concrete language, saying things like, I exercise or I study. At C2, however, you need to handle abstract concepts such as well-being, ambition, curiosity, or resilience. For example, instead of only saying, I want to succeed, you could say, my ambition is to build a career that is not only successful but also personally fulfilling. Notice how the second version goes beyond the action itself and touches on a bigger idea. This is what advanced speakers do. They link their experiences to larger universal concepts. Let's practice moving from concrete to abstract. Start with this sentence. I like to learn. At a higher level, you might say, my curiosity drives me to constantly seek out new knowledge and experiences. Another one, I don't give up. At C2, you might say, resilience is a quality I deeply value, as it allows me to overcome setbacks and continue moving forward. By practicing like this, you train yourself to see beyond the surface and connect your English to deeper ideas. Another important step is learning to use metaphors and imagery. Native speakers often use metaphors to make their speech more powerful. For example, instead of saying, the argument started, you might say, the argument was ignited by a single comment instead of, she has a lot of good ideas. You could say, she is a fountain of good ideas. These phrases give life to your language and make it more expressive. At the C2 level, mastering metaphors will make your English sound artistic and memorable. Let's try some practice. Repeat after me. His words were a guiding light in a time of confusion. Another one. She has a heart of gold and is always willing to help others. And one more. Life is a roller coaster, full of ups and downs, but the ride is always worth it. As you practice these, try creating your own metaphors about your daily life. This creative habit will make your English both advanced and personal. At C2, it is also important to master emphasis and subtlety. Sometimes you want to highlight something strongly, and sometimes you want to say it gently. At B1, you might only use very for emphasis, like, she is very smart. At C2, you can use alternatives, exceptionally, incredibly, remarkably, truly, genuinely. For subtlety, you can use words like rather, somewhat, a bit, fairly, or quite. This range of emphasis allows you to express exactly how strong your opinion or feeling is. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. She is an exceptionally talented musician. Another one, I was genuinely surprised by his kind gesture. Now try subtlety. The movie was rather long, but the story was good. Another one, I'm a bit concerned about the upcoming deadline, but I think we can manage. Being able to shift between strong and soft emphasis is another key part of advanced fluency. Another key part of advanced fluency is using rhetorical questions. At the B1 level, learners usually make direct statements like, "This is important." At C2, you can use rhetorical questions to engage listeners. Isn't it remarkable how much we can achieve when we work together? Or who could have predicted that the world would change so much in just a few years? Rhetorical questions add rhythm and connection to your speech, and they make you sound persuasive and confident. Let's practice with a few. Repeat after me. Isn't it incredible how a single book can change your perspective on life? Another one. Don't you agree that kindness is one of the most powerful forces in the world? And one more. How many times have we seen history repeat itself? Practicing rhetorical questions will help you learn to speak not just correctly, but also in a way that connects emotionally with others. Now let's do a real life exercise. Imagine you are telling a friend about a concert you attended. At B1, you might say, "I went to a concert. It was good." At C2, you could say, "I recently attended an incredible concert where the energy of the crowd was absolutely electric. The performance was so powerful that I felt completely captivated from the first song to the last." Notice how this version adds detail, emotion, and depth. Try practicing this exercise with your own favorite concert, trip, or meal. Begin with a simple sentence, then upgrade it step by step until it sounds advanced. To wrap up this section, remember that moving from B1 to C2 is not just about grammar and vocabulary. It's about expanding your ability to think, describe, and connect. Advanced English is the bridge between everyday conversation and meaningful, powerful communication. Each time you add detail, each time you practice synonyms, metaphors, or rhetorical questions, you are building your way toward true fluency. At the advanced level, another powerful skill is the ability to use emphasis in your sentence structure, not only with vocabulary. At B1, learners usually follow a simple subject-verb-object order. For example, "I value honesty." At C2, however, you can rearrange sentences for style and impact. For example, "What I value most is honesty," or "Honesty, I must admit, is a quality I deeply admire," or "It is honesty that I believe forms the foundation of any good relationship." These variations show control over word order and highlight different parts of the message. Advanced English isn't just about what you say, but how you shape it. Let's practice a few. Repeat after me. What I find most difficult is learning new grammar rules. Another one. It was her dedication that truly impressed the entire team. And one more. What makes this journey so rewarding is seeing the progress day by day. By practicing these, you will learn to emphasize exactly what you want to highlight in your sentences, giving your speech variety and strength. Another key skill is mastering reported speech. At B1, learners usually use direct quotes. "He said, 'I need help.'" At C2, you need to use reported speech naturally, especially in conversations, essays, or professional settings. For example, "He mentioned that he needed some assistance." Or, "She informed me that the meeting had been rescheduled for the following week." Reported speech shows maturity in language use because it allows you to share information smoothly and clearly. Let's practice this together. Direct. She asked, "Are you coming?" Reported, "She asked if I was coming." Another one, direct. My friend said, "I finished the project." Reported, "My friend told me that she had finished the project." And one more, direct. The teacher said, "You must submit your essays by Friday." Reported, the teacher instructed us to submit our essays by Friday. Repeat these slowly until they feel natural. The more you use reported speech, the more professional and advanced your English will sound. Let's now focus on building arguments and persuasive language. At the B1 level, many learners simply state their opinion. "I think reading is good." At the C2 level, you must back your opinion with reasons, evidence, and a persuasive structure. For example, "I'm firmly convinced that reading is one of the most beneficial habits one can adopt, as it not only broadens your vocabulary but also enhances critical thinking skills." Or, "In my view, the value of reading extends far beyond entertainment. It's a fundamental tool for personal and intellectual growth." Persuasive language shows you can think critically and express ideas with conviction. Practice with me. Repeat. I would argue that traveling is an invaluable form of education. Another one. I believe that setting clear goals is the first step toward achieving them. And one more. There is no doubt in my mind that continuous learning is essential in today's rapidly changing world. Try to use this type of language in debates, discussions, or even personal journaling. The more you practice structured opinions, the more fluent and confident you will become. Another important feature of C2 fluency is advanced linking devices for cause and effect. At B1, learners might say, "The flight was delayed, so I missed my connection." At C2, you can say, "As a consequence of the flight delay, I missed my connection," or "Due to the initial delay, I was unable to make my connecting flight," or "The flight's late departure resulted in me missing my connection." These advanced cause and effect expressions make your English smoother and more academic. Here's a short exercise. Repeat after me. Owing to unforeseen circumstances, the event was postponed. Another one. As a result of his hard work, he received a promotion. And one more. The company's profits increased, largely because of its new marketing strategy. Practicing these structures will help you sound natural in both professional and casual contexts. At the advanced level, you also need to master contrast and concession. Instead of only saying ACT, "The job is difficult, but I enjoy it," you could say, "Although the job is demanding, I find it incredibly rewarding." Or, "The job is challenging. Nevertheless, I am passionate about it." Or, "While the work can be stressful at times, I must admit I thrive on the challenge." These structures allow you to present balanced, nuanced ideas, which is a clear sign of advanced thinking. Let's practice some contrast sentences. Repeat. Despite the bad weather, we had a wonderful time. Another one. While I understand your point, I don't entirely agree. And one more. The city is very expensive. Nonetheless, millions of people choose to live there. The more you practice using contrast, the more flexible and sophisticated your English will become. Finally, let's touch on rhythm and fluency practice again. Fluency is not only about words and grammar, it is about flow. At B1, many learners pause too much, saying, I went to the park. At C2, you learn to group words into chunks. For example, I went to the park yesterday afternoon and I had a wonderful time walking among the trees. To train this, try shadowing exercises. Listen to a native speaker and repeat exactly matching their rhythm. Shadowing builds muscle memory for natural speech and helps you develop the flow of a native speaker. Another crucial step towards C2 fluency is mastering subtle differences in meaning between similar words. At B1, many learners often rely on a limited set of vocabulary, repeating words like good, bad, nice, big, and small. At C2, however, you must be able to choose the exact word that fits the context. For example, instead of always saying funny, you could say hilarious, amusing, witty, comical, or lighthearted. Each word has a slightly different shade of meaning. Hilarious means extremely funny, while witty suggests clever and intelligent humor. This sensitivity to context is what makes your English advanced. Let's practice this idea. The simple sentence is, the man was angry. At C2, you could say, the man was furious when he discovered the mistake. Or, the man was clearly irritated by the constant interruptions. Or, the man was indignant at the unfair accusation. Repeat these after me and then try to create your own upgraded version. The more you experiment, the better you will get at selecting the perfect word. Now let's talk about building fluency with advanced adjectives and adverbs. At B1, you might say, the view was nice. At C2, you can expand. The view from the top was absolutely spectacular. Or, the view was profoundly beautiful, especially at sunrise. Adding stronger adverbs and adjectives makes your English more vivid and expressive. Instead of, he is a good speaker, you could say, he is a remarkably persuasive speaker. Or, he is an exceptionally articulate speaker who can explain complex ideas with ease. These additions turn basic descriptions into advanced ones. Practice with me. Repeat. The meal was exceptionally delicious. Another one. She performed remarkably well under pressure. And one more. The film was profoundly moving. Notice how each sentence paints a picture. Try to add at least one advanced adjective or adverb each time you describe something in English. This habit will steadily raise your level toward C2. Another area where advanced learners excel is using the passive voice effectively. At B1, most learners stick to active sentences. Someone stole my bike. At C2, you must also know when to use the passive form, my bike was stolen. The passive voice is useful when the focus is on the action or result, not the person doing it. For example, the new policy will be implemented next month. Or, all employees were notified of the changes via email. Advanced English speakers use both active and passive forms naturally, depending on what they want to emphasize. Let's practice passive sentences. Repeat after me. The award was presented by a famous actor. Another one. The research was conducted over a period of 3 years. And one more. It is believed that practice is the key to fluency. Practice switching between active and passive sentences until you feel comfortable using both. This flexibility is key to advanced grammar. At the C2 level, you also need to use advanced relative clauses. At B1, learners may say, that's the company. I work for it. At C2, you could say, that's the company where I work. Or even, that's the company for which I've been working for the past 5 years. These structures allow you to combine ideas smoothly and add detail without sounding repetitive. Another example, the book, which was published last year, has already become a bestseller. Or, the person whose advice I trust the most is my mentor. Relative clauses make your sentences more advanced and complex. Let's practice. Repeat. This is the cafe where I often go to work. Another one. The reason why I'm learning English is to connect with more people. And one more. She introduced me to her brother, who is a professional musician. By mastering relative clauses, you can express richer ideas in a single sentence, which is a major sign of C2 fluency. Now let's focus on advanced connectors that add sophistication. At B1, you may use because or so. At C2, you should use phrases like owing to, in light of, with regard to, in spite of, notwithstanding, and provided that. For example, in light of recent events, the meeting has been canceled. Or, with regard to your proposal, we need more time to review it. These connectors sound formal and polished, making your English more versatile. Let's practice these connectors. Repeat. Notwithstanding the challenges, they remained optimistic. Another one, you will succeed, provided that you work hard and stay focused. And one more, in spite of his young age, he is remarkably mature. Advanced connectors like these will strengthen your speaking and writing skills at the highest level. Finally, let's do a practical fluency exercise. Imagine you are describing a recent trip. At B1, you might say, I went to the beach. The weather was good. I had fun. At C2, you could say, I recently took a trip to the coast where the weather was absolutely perfect. The entire experience was incredibly relaxing, and I came back feeling completely refreshed and rejuvenated. Notice how the advanced version flows like a story with details, connectors, and variety in grammar. Practice this exercise with your own daily activities. Start with a basic version, then expand it step by step until it feels like advanced storytelling. At C2 Fluency, one of the most valuable skills you can develop is precision in expressing opinions. At B1, you might only say, I think it's good, or I don't like it. At C2, you must expand your toolbox. For example, in my professional opinion, this is a viable strategy. Or, I'm inclined to believe this approach might be more effective. Or, from what I can tell, this idea has significant potential, although it needs some refinement. These structures show your ability to think critically and to express your ideas in a more professional, nuanced way. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. As far as I'm concerned, a positive attitude is essential for success. Another one. I am of the opinion that continuous learning is the key to personal growth. And one more. I would argue that creativity is just as important as technical skill in this field. Try to use these expressions when giving your opinions in English. They will immediately make you sound more advanced. Another powerful area is building contrast with advanced phrases. At B1, learners often rely on but. At C2, you can use alternatives like nevertheless, on the other hand, at the same time, conversely, and even so. For example, the presentation was long. Nevertheless, it was incredibly informative. Or, working from home offers flexibility. On the other hand, it can sometimes feel isolating. Or, the journey was exhausting. Even so, it was an unforgettable experience. These alternatives give your English rhythm and sophistication. Let's practice with a few. Repeat after me. He is a very talented artist. Nevertheless, he struggles to find recognition. Another one. The city is vibrant and exciting. Conversely, the countryside offers peace and tranquility. And one more. The feedback was critical. Even so, I found it very helpful for my improvement. Practicing these will help you vary your language and avoid repeating the same simple structures. At C2, you should also master advanced noun phrases. Instead of saying, "it is a challenge," you could say, "it is a formidable challenge that requires careful planning." Instead of, "she has an idea," you could say, "she has a truly innovative idea that could revolutionize the industry." Expanding noun phrases is a great way to add detail and sound, advanced without making your sentences too complicated. Let's practice. Repeat after me. He is a widely acclaimed author, known for his compelling storytelling. Another one. It was an incredibly rewarding experience that taught me a lot about myself. And one more. They live in a charming little cottage nestled in the countryside. The more detail you add, the richer your English becomes. Try expanding your own noun phrases about your life, your job, your hobbies, and your experiences. Another feature of advanced fluency is flexibility with modal verbs. At B1, you might only use can, must, and should. At C2, you need to use modal verbs in different tenses and with different nuances. For example, "I ought to have started earlier to avoid the rush," or "you needn't have worried so much, everything turned out fine," or "he must have been exhausted after such a long flight." These advanced uses of modal verbs allow you to talk about possibility, regret, criticism, or speculation in a sophisticated way. Let's practice. Repeat after me. You should have seen the look on her face. It was priceless. Another one. He might have misunderstood the instructions. And one more. I couldn't have done it without your support. Try practicing modal verbs in past, present, and future contexts until they feel automatic. At the advanced level, you must also become comfortable with expressions of probability and certainty. At B1, you might only say, "maybe it will rain." At C2, you could say, "there is a distinct possibility of rain later today." Or, "it is almost inevitable that the new policy will face some opposition." Or, "I am fairly certain that he will accept the offer." These phrases make your speech precise and formal when needed. Let's practice a few together. Repeat. It is highly probable that the project will be completed ahead of schedule. Another one. There is a slight chance that the plans will change. And one more. It is virtually certain that technology will play an even bigger role in our future. Using these expressions will help you speak with confidence in academic, business, and everyday discussions. Now let's do a short real-life exercise. Imagine someone asks you, "What are your hobbies?" At B1, you might answer, "I like music." At C2, you could say, "Oh, I'm passionate about music. I particularly enjoy playing the guitar as it's a fantastic way for me to unwind and express my creativity." Notice how the advanced version is full, precise, and inspiring. Try practicing with questions about your daily life. Start with a simple answer, then push it further, adding details, connectors, and advanced vocabulary. At the C2 level, another essential skill is mastering advanced comparisons. At B1, you might say, "This car is faster than that one." or the first movie was better. At C2, you can expand your comparisons to sound more polished. This car is considerably faster than the previous model. Or the first movie was infinitely more engaging than its sequel. You can even use advanced structures like not nearly as, just as, or nothing like. For example, the new software is not nearly as user-friendly as the old version. Or the final product was nothing like the initial design. It was a complete transformation. Let's practice. Repeat after me. His second book is substantially better than his first. Another one. The journey was just as amazing as I had imagined. And one more. This solution is nowhere near as effective as the one we discussed yesterday. By practicing these forms, you add precision and variety to your comparisons, moving closer to true C2 fluency. At the advanced level, you should also master inversion for emphasis. Instead of saying, I have seldom heard such a beautiful voice, you could say, seldom have I heard such a beautiful voice. Instead of, you will not only learn English, but you will also gain confidence, you could say, not only will you learn English, but you will also gain confidence. Inversion gives your English elegance and a more formal, literary style. It is not common in daily conversation, but it is an excellent tool for advanced writing, presentations, and formal speaking. Let's practice a few examples. Repeat after me. Never before have I encountered such a difficult problem. Another one. Rarely does a movie capture the essence of a book so perfectly. And one more. Under no circumstances should you share this information with anyone. These structures may feel unusual at first, but once mastered, they will make your English stand out as truly advanced. Another important feature of C2 fluency is using advanced conditional structures. At B1, learners usually know the first and second conditionals. At C2, you should be comfortable with mixed conditionals, which connect past events with present or future results. For example, if I hadn't taken that job, I wouldn't be living in this city now. Or, if he were a more organized person, he wouldn't have missed the deadline yesterday. These sentences show that you can think across different time frames, a skill that demonstrates true mastery of English. Practice with me. Repeat. If I had taken your advice, I wouldn't be in the situation now. Another one. If she were more adventurous, she would have joined us on the trip last year. And one more. If I spoke French, I would have understood what they were saying at the meeting. These conditionals take practice, but they are powerful tools for advanced communication. At the C2 level, you should also be skilled in using advanced question forms. At B1, you might ask, why is this a problem? At C2, you can make your questions more sophisticated. What are the underlying causes of this problem? Or, in what ways does this issue impact our community? Or, what might be the long-term consequences of this decision? These types of questions show depth of thought and higher-level fluency. Let's practice. Repeat after me. To what extent is social media influencing our society? Another one. In what ways can we promote a healthier work-life balance? And one more. How might we better prepare for the challenges of the future? Practice forming these types of questions when speaking with friends, teachers, or colleagues to develop your advanced fluency. Another important element is mastering advanced expressions of time. At B1, you may say, I'll do it later. At C2, you can expand with phrases like in the foreseeable future, for the time being, in due course, from this point forward, and in the long term. For example, in the long term, this investment should be very profitable. Or, for the time being, let's stick to the original plan. These expressions give your English natural rhythm and variety. Let's practice together. Repeat. In due course, you will receive all the necessary documents. Another one. From this point forward, we will hold our team meetings on Monday mornings. And one more. The changes are unlikely to happen in the foreseeable future. Using time expressions naturally is another way to demonstrate fluency at the highest level. Finally, let's do a short real-life practice. Imagine you are describing your future plans. At B1, you might say, I want a new job. At C2, you could say, my long-term goal is to transition into a career that aligns more closely with my personal values and allows me to make a meaningful impact. Or, looking ahead, I aspire to take on a leadership role where I can mentor others and contribute to the company's growth. Practice expanding your own goals this way. It will not only improve your English, but also strengthen your motivation to keep going. At the C2 level, one of the clearest signs of fluency is your ability to handle uncertainty and speculation naturally. At B1, you might say, maybe the train is late. At C2, you can express the same idea in more advanced ways. The train may have been delayed due to technical issues, or it's conceivable that the train is running behind schedule, or I suspect the train might be late because of the weather. These alternatives make your English sound more precise and adaptable to different situations. Let's practice. Repeat after me. She could have forgotten about our appointment. Another one. It's plausible that they took a different route. And one more. He might well have changed his mind at the last minute. Using a variety of speculative phrases shows that you can think flexibly in English, which is an advanced skill. Another important aspect of C2 fluency is mastering emphasis with cleft sentences. Instead of saying, her confidence impressed me, you could say, what impressed me was her confidence. Instead of, I need a short break, you could say, all I need is a short break. These structures allow you to highlight specific parts of your sentence, making your speech more dynamic and expressive. Let's try a few together. Repeat. What I find most challenging is staying motivated every single day. Another one. It was his kindness that really made a difference. And one more. All I want is an opportunity to prove myself. Practicing cleft sentences helps you add variety and emphasis to your speech, an important step towards C2 mastery. At the advanced level, you also need to refine your ability to agree and disagree diplomatically. At B1, you might simply say, I agree, or I don't agree. At C2, you can use more nuanced phrases. I couldn't agree with you more on that point, or I see your point, but I have a slightly different take on it. Or, while I agree in principle, I think the practical application might be challenging. These expressions allow you to participate in discussions respectfully and with depth. Practice with me. Repeat. You've hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what I was thinking. Another one. I agree up to a point, but I also believe we need to consider the costs. And one more. I'm not entirely sure I share that view, but I appreciate your perspective. These advanced expressions will help you sound balanced, confident, and respectful in any conversation. At C2, another important area is mastering discourse in longer turns. Many B1 learners struggle to speak for more than a few sentences without pausing or repeating themselves. Advanced speakers, however, can hold the floor by structuring their ideas clearly. For example, you could say, I'd like to make two main points regarding this topic. First, we need to consider the budget. Second, we must evaluate the timeline. Let me elaborate on the budget first. Notice how the sentence is organized with signposts. Two main points. First, second. These keep your listener engaged and help you deliver your thoughts smoothly. Let's practice with a sample. Repeat. There are several reasons why this strategy is effective. First and foremost, it is cost efficient. Moreover, it is easy to implement. And finally, it has a proven track record of success. Now try creating your own structured speech about a daily topic like food, hobbies, or study habits. This practice will help you speak more confidently for longer periods, which is essential at C2. At the advanced level, you also need to use subtle intensifiers and downtoners to control your message. For example, instead of saying, I am tired, you could say, I'm completely exhausted, I'm absolutely drained, or I'm feeling a bit weary. Each phrase changes the intensity of your opinion. Similarly, instead of saying, it's expensive, you could say, it's slightly overpriced, it's quite costly, or it's outrageously expensive. These small shifts in intensity make your English more precise and natural. Let's practice together. Repeat. I'm incredibly proud of what you've achieved. Another one. The instructions were somewhat confusing at first. And one more. I'm rather optimistic about our chances of success. Practicing intensifiers and downtoners gives you control over how strong or soft your message sounds, an essential element of advanced communication. Finally, let's do a real-life exercise to bring everything together. Imagine someone asks you, how was your day? At B1, you might say, it was busy. At C2, you could say, it was quite a hectic day, actually. I had back-to-back meetings all morning, but what I really enjoyed was finally making some significant progress on my main project this afternoon. Notice how this answer uses intensifiers, cleft sentences, and advanced vocabulary, all in a natural way. Practicing this kind of response with common questions will steadily move you toward advanced fluency. At C2, one of the most impressive abilities is mastering nuance when expressing emotions and attitudes. At B1, you may say, I am happy, or I am sad. These are correct but simple. At C2, you need to show shades of feeling. For example, instead of, I'm worried, you could say, I'm feeling a little apprehensive about the presentation, or I'm deeply concerned about the potential consequences. Instead of, I'm excited, you could say, I'm eagerly anticipating the trip, or I'm absolutely buzzing with excitement. Each choice of word expresses a different intensity. Choosing the exact emotion is what separates advanced speakers from intermediate ones. Let's practice. Repeat after me. I was delighted to receive your invitation. Another one. He was utterly devastated by the news. And one more. She felt cautiously optimistic about the future. By practicing different levels of emotion, you will gain control over the mood and style of your English. Another advanced skill is mastering indirectness and politeness. At B1, learners often speak very directly. I want some water. At C2, you must know how to soften your requests. Could I possibly get some water, please? Or, I was hoping I could get some water. In professional or social situations, indirectness shows respect and sophistication. For example, instead of, that's not a good idea, you might say, I'm not sure that's the most effective way forward. These small changes make your English polite, advanced, and natural. Let's practice. Repeat. I was wondering if you had a moment to spare. Another one. Would you mind giving me a hand with this? And one more. Perhaps we could consider another option. By practicing polite forms, you prepare yourself for professional and academic conversations where tone matters just as much as accuracy. At C2, you should also be comfortable with advanced academic and formal vocabulary. At B1, you might say, we need to fix the problem. At C2, you could say, we need to rectify the issue. Instead of, we need more information, you could say, we require further clarification. Instead of, he got the job, you could say, he secured the position. These choices make your English more professional and elegant, suitable for essays, presentations, or job interviews. Let's practice. Repeat after me. We must implement a new strategy to achieve our goals. Another one. The study aims to investigate the long-term effects of this policy. And one more. It is imperative that we adhere to the safety guidelines. Notice how each sentence uses more formal verbs and nouns. Practicing these will give you the flexibility to move easily between casual and formal situations. Another step toward advanced fluency is mastering hedging language. Native speakers often use hedging to sound careful and precise. For example, instead of saying, this will work, you might say, it's likely that this will work, or this seems to be a promising approach. Instead of, he is wrong, you might say, I think his conclusion might be slightly flawed. This type of cautious language is common in academic and professional contexts. It shows that you are aware of nuance and don't overgeneralize. Let's practice. Repeat. The results suggest that our hypothesis is correct. Another one. It would appear that there is a strong correlation between the two variables. And one more. In my opinion, this tends to be the most common mistake learners make. Using hedging language makes your speech sound careful, balanced, and advanced. At the C2 level, you should also master rhetorical devices such as parallelism. This is when you repeat similar structures to create rhythm and emphasis. For example, to succeed, we must plan carefully, work diligently, and act decisively. Or, she came, she saw, she conquered. Parallelism gives your speech a powerful, memorable quality. Practice with me. Repeat. Learning a language is about understanding the culture, connecting with people, and discovering yourself. Another one. He promised to be honest, to be loyal, and to be supportive. And one more. Whether in triumph or in tragedy, we must always find the strength to carry on. These rhythmic patterns make your English sound inspiring and professional. Finally, let's put everything into a real-life scenario. Imagine you are in a job interview and someone asks, what is your greatest weakness? At B1, you might say, I am not good at public speaking. At C2, you could say, historically, I've tended to be overly critical of my own work. While this drives me to produce high-quality results, I've learned to balance it with more constructive perspective, celebrating progress and learning from mistakes rather than just focusing on perfection. Notice how the advanced answer is reflective, strategic, and demonstrates self-awareness. Practicing responses like this will prepare you for real situations where advanced fluency truly matters. At C2 Fluency, one of the most noticeable skills is the ability to summarize complex information clearly. At B1, learners may struggle to condense long ideas, often repeating themselves or leaving out important points. At C2, you can take a large amount of information and express it concisely without losing meaning. For example, after reading a long article, you could say, in essence, the article argues that artificial intelligence will fundamentally reshape the job market over the next decade. This ability to summarize shows maturity, confidence, and precision in your communication. Let's practice. Imagine you've just finished a team meeting. At B1, you might say, we talked about the project. We have problems. We will meet again. At C2, you could say, to sum up, we identified the key challenges facing the project and agreed on a set of action points to address them before our next meeting. Notice how the advanced version is short, clear, and complete. Try summarizing your own day, your favorite book, or even this lesson in just a few sentences. That's how you develop summarizing skills. Another advanced skill is paraphrasing. At B1, many learners repeat the same words again and again. At C2, you should be able to rephrase the same idea in different ways. For example, if someone says, we need to improve our communication, you could respond, yes, enhancing the way we communicate is crucial. Or, absolutely, we need to find better ways to interact with each other. Or, I agree. Fostering better communication within the team is a priority. This flexibility shows that you are not limited by vocabulary and can adapt your language to any context. Let's practice together. The sentence is, he is a hard worker. Advanced versions, he has a very strong work ethic, or he is incredibly diligent and dedicated, or he consistently puts in a great deal of effort. Repeat these and then create your own versions. The more you paraphrase, the more natural and advanced you will sound. At C2, you also need to master advanced transitions when giving presentations or telling stories. At B1, learners often use basic connectors like then, next, and after that. At C2, you should use transitions like moving on. Furthermore, having said that, in addition, to put it differently, and in contrast. For example, furthermore, it's important to consider the long-term implications. Or, having said that, we must not ignore the potential risks involved. These advanced transitions guide your listener smoothly through your ideas. Let's practice. Repeat. Moving on to the next point, I'd like to discuss our marketing strategy. Another one. In addition, we need to secure more funding to ensure the project's success. And one more. In contrast, the previous approach was far less effective. Using transitions makes your English flow logically and professionally, which is essential for C2 mastery. Another skill to practice is advanced negation. At B1, learners may simply say, that is not possible, or I don't agree. At C2, you can use more sophisticated forms. That doesn't seem to be a feasible option. Or, I'm not entirely in agreement with that. Or, it is by no means an easy task. These kinds of negative structures add subtlety and prevent your English from sounding too blunt. Practice with me. Repeat. It's not that I disagree, but I think there's another way to look at it. Another one. That is not necessarily the only conclusion we can draw from the data. And one more. By no means should we underestimate the complexity of this situation. Notice how these sentences sound gentle, precise, and natural, just like advanced speakers. At the advanced level, you should also be comfortable with expressions of certainty and doubt in formal and informal contexts. At B1, learners often say, I know, or I don't know. At C2, you could say, I am firmly convinced of this fact, or I have some reservations about that plan, or I am inclined to doubt the accuracy of that report. These phrases allow you to show confidence or caution with elegance. Let's practice. Repeat. I am quite certain that we are on the right track. Another one. I have serious misgivings about whether this will work. And one more. I strongly suspect there is more to this story than we are being told. Practicing certainty and doubt will make you more persuasive and natural in real conversations. Finally, let's do a real-life exercise. Imagine a colleague asks for your opinion on a new proposal. At B1, you might say, it's a good idea. At C2, you could say, broadly speaking, I think the proposal is very promising. It clearly outlines the objectives and provides a solid framework for moving forward. However, I do have some minor reservations about the proposed timeline, which seems a bit ambitious. Notice how this answer is structured, detailed, and advanced. Practicing expanded answers like this every day will move you closer to C2. At C2 Fluency, one final key skill is the ability to adapt your language to different audiences. At B1, learners often use the same style with everyone, friends, teachers, colleagues. At C2, however, you need to adjust your tone, vocabulary, and formality depending on who you are speaking to. With a close friend, you might say, "Hey, what's up? Got a sec?" But with a senior manager, you would say, "Excuse me, would you happen to have a moment to discuss something?" Both are correct, but each is appropriate in its own context. This flexibility shows that you are not just fluent, but also socially intelligent with your language. Let's practice. Imagine you need to cancel a plan. Informal. Hey, sorry, can't make it tonight. Neutral. I'm afraid I won't be able to make it this evening. Formal. I regret to inform you that I will be unable to attend our scheduled meeting this evening. Repeat these slowly and notice the shift in tone. This ability to change register is one of the most advanced skills you can develop in English. At C2, you should also be able to use humor, irony, and figurative expressions comfortably. At B1, many learners avoid humor because they fear making mistakes. But humor is part of real communication. For example, if you're working hard on a difficult task, you might say with a sigh, "Well, no rest for the wicked." Or if someone states the obvious, you could reply, "Tell me something I don't know." These playful uses of language make you sound natural and confident. Practice with me. Repeat. I've been running around all day. I feel like a headless chicken. Another one. He's trying to get that old car running again, but I think he's flogging a dead horse. And one more. Don't worry, every cloud has a silver lining. By practicing idiomatic humor, you connect more easily with native speakers and show advanced fluency. Another important part of C2 fluency is mastering the skill of reflection and self expression. At B1, you might only say, I learned English. At C2, you can reflect, my journey with English has been a profound process of self discovery, challenging me to think in new ways and see the world from different perspectives. This depth of reflection makes your English meaningful and memorable. Here's an exercise. Answer this question. How has learning English changed you? At B1, you might say, I can speak to more people. At C2, you could say, learning English has fundamentally broadened my horizons, giving me the confidence to engage with global conversations and a deeper appreciation for the diversity of human experience. Try reflecting in this way about your own journey. This practice will give you emotional fluency alongside linguistic fluency. Now, let's bring all of this together in one last real-life practice. Imagine you are at a networking event and someone asks what you do. At B1, you might say, I am a student. I study business. At C2, you could say, I'm currently pursuing a degree in business with a particular focus on sustainable entrepreneurship. I'm really passionate about finding innovative ways that businesses can solve social and environmental problems. Do you hear the difference? The advanced version flows naturally, provides depth, and reveals personality. That is what you should aim for in your own English. So remember this. The journey to C2 fluency is not a giant leap, but a series of small, powerful steps, just like the ones we practiced today. The transformation we talked about at the start of this video, it has already begun. You now have the roadmap to move beyond just correct English and start communicating with true confidence and authenticity. Your challenge is to take just one new phrase or technique from this masterclass and use it in a real conversation today. Thank you for joining me, Elena, here at English in Moments. Oh, if this lesson has helped you, become part of our daily learning community by subscribing and hitting that bell icon. We're here every day to help you grow. Until the next lesson, keep practicing and building your bridge to the world.